Okay, so I'm going to show you how I solder. What I have here is a piece, it's already fluxed all over the place. And today I'm using paste flux. It's a little stiffer when you go to put it on. And it's a little bit more scrubbing when you get it off but there's a lot less splattering with this, and I just kind of like paste better for that reason. So what I've done already is I squared it up using these Morton layout strips, and this is a Homosoap board this is sitting on. And I've been using this piece of Homosoap board forever. You can see all the burns from where I've soldered it. And it just gets wet and it gets patina on it. It doesn't matter. You let it dry out and you use it over and over again. It doesn't fall apart. It's easy to use. It's easy to score and cut if you want it to the right size. And it's easy to put push pins in, but it holds them very well. So that's the reason I like Homosoap board, and it's cheap. I get it from the lumber yard for like $20 for a sheet that's like 4x8, which is a lot. All right, so I've already just tack soldered joints here and there so that I could take those Morton layout strips away and just have room to work on everything. The other thing I always do in the beginning is I just tin, just cover with a thin layer of solder. I tin these seams here that are going to go out to the channel. And the reason I want to do that is because I don't want to bead all the way out to the end of the glass, because it will get in the way of the channel when you try to mount it onto the glass. So you want this flat here at the edge. So then I'll go and I'll start a bead about here and work in. So I always have a little wet sponge that I use to wipe my soldering iron off. You just put a little water on it, it dries out, you put a little bit more. It's got holes in it so that it keeps the tip nice and clean from extra junk hanging on. So when I solder, I keep the roll of solder in one hand. I've got my soldering iron in the other. Now I'm hooked up to a rheostat over here, so I can control the amount of power going into the iron. Therefore, I'm controlling the temperature actually. I just solder at this 100%, but if I'm teaching somebody, they're going to be going a little slower than I am. It usually works out better if you're just beginning to use about 80%. That would equal an 80-watt iron. This is a 100-watt Weller. So I've got the solder in one hand, the iron in the other, and it's important the way you grip it. When I'm teaching, most of the time, people who use a soldering iron in overhand grip seems like they have better control and do a better job, and that's the way I do it. Otherwise, people you'll see trying to hold it kind of like a pencil, and that just is a little more awkward and you have a little less control. So the overhand grip, if you're having a problem with soldering, try it and see if it helps you. So I've refluxed everything where I've tinned and where I've tacked, and now I'm just going to start here with the solder, and I start to melt it, and then I go down right onto the glass, and then I just pull the solder towards me. And sometimes I'll stop at a joint and then start again. It just depends. Sometimes the solder builds up a little bit too much behind there, so you got to take it away for a minute and then put it back down. But I'm touching the glass as I'm doing this. Okay, so there we go. Now, I didn't really like the way that turned out over here. You see it's kind of lumpy there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix it, which is like, hey, there's an ant in my flux. This is one thing a lot of people just have a problem with, is fixing the solder. So there's too much there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go down with the soldering iron, and then I'm just going to come back up. That's all you have to do. Some of that solder is going to stick to the iron. And the other way, if you don't have enough solder, you just go and kind of melt the two things together. And then it'll turn out smooth. And any little places that you see where you've joined the solder together, if it's not 100% perfect, it doesn't matter, because by the time that you get black patina on this, it's going to look perfect. So we just keep going and get the solder started melting, and then just come across like this. And usually when I'm soldering, this is like typing. I do a better job typing when nobody's watching me. I also do a better job soldering, apparently, when nobody's watching me. But, so what we do is, just, if you've got a little bump, you just melt the things together. And basically this down and straight up motion is what you want to do to fix something. Down and straight up. And I'm not really liking the way that this is acting, and I think it might have to do with this flux. And so what we're going to do is...
Might have to do with the cameraman.
I'm going to change the flux. I'm not going to use that anymore. I'm going to use something different. And I'll tell you what we'll use this time just for something different. I've got a lot of different kinds of flux over here. This is Glass Pro, and it is a gel flux. And so I'm going to put some of that on there. Sometimes I actually mix fluxes together. I'll mix gel and paste, and then it almost makes kind of a lotion. And that's actually my favorite consistency for flux to be. But you have to mix it yourself because you can't buy it that way. All right, so let's see if that makes any difference, because the flux a lot of times makes a lot of difference. And so if you're not happy with the results that you're getting, sometimes if you change the flux, then it'll work better. So let's see what this does. You can hear it bubbling. You can see, or at least I can see, that it acts differently with this flux than it did with the other one. So the other one, the solder was probably stiffer than it is here. And this seems like it's requiring me to melt more solder, but you still can get like a fairly smooth line. This is not one of my perfect pieces by a long shot. Okay, so it's a little flat over there, so you just kind of go over there and you add your solder. I think that this motion where I'm drawing the solder along with my iron like that is the one that works the best for me. Now see, that is absolutely perfect right there. That's what you want to happen every single time. So I'm thinking over here that this paste flux I was using isn't doing the trick for me. You can see how the solder over here is cooperating a whole lot better than it was over there. So I'm just going to continue putting a mix of those two solders on because it seemed like it worked better. Don't be afraid to experiment with stuff like that, because that's the way you learn what works the best for you. Sometimes you don't have enough on there, so you just put a little bit more and off you go. Now that's going through to the bottom a little bit, but that's okay. The thing to remember about soldering, I think a lot of people are afraid to put the soldering iron down on the glass. They're always soldering kind of up in the air. And when you solder up in the air, you are just not going to be able to get things to work the way you want to. But if you go down like this, where you're actually really melting it, and don't crack the glass, that's right. Well, you got to fool around for a bit before you get the glass hot enough to crack it. I'm not worried at all about cracking a glass with a soldering iron. It hasn't happened in a long time. Sometimes it's more the fault of the glass than it is the solderer. I used to have a lot of problems with Euroburrows, fractures and streamers cracking. So see, if it's all a matter of kind of letting the solder go where it wants to and kind of using its tendencies to get it to look the way that you want. So if you just go down like that and back up again, it'll kind of all level out. So there we are. And that went through. If you have a problem with your solder melting through to the bottom, which it will do, it will always do that. Not necessarily in every piece, but it's always going to happen. When it does, you just let that area cool and then go back. You see it's going through again. And just kind of, let it cool off and then just kind of quickly touch it up. And then that's as close right there is I want to get to the end because I'm going to put a channel around this and I need room to get the channel on there, and then I'll connect the two after the channel is on there. So there's something that's a little bit lumpy. If you just go down and straight up, sometimes it'll straighten out for you, and then sometimes it'll go to the bottom. So all you do is just put some more flux on there, and then you go back and fix it. So that's about it for soldering. I think I actually need a new tip on this iron too. I've been using this one for a really long time. So there you go. See, you just do that. Just like that. Usually I don't mess around this much. But I'm a little rusty. I haven't soldered for a while. So there. That's kind of all there is to it. Huh? Oh yeah, and one of the reasons we get such a good fit, get such a nice job on the seams here, is because of using that pattern paper, Piper's pattern paper. I have to put in a plug for that, you know. All right, so there it is. That's how I solder. So if you have any questions, just send me a note on Facebook and I'll see what I can do to answer you. This is the first of a whole bunch of videos we want to make just to show people how to do something if they're having problems with it, kind of try to help everybody fix it so that they get better results. Because stained glass is supposed to be fun to do. It's not supposed to be a frustrating, horrible job. Okay, that's it.
Say goodbye.
Bye.